Hello class, my name is Audrey and today I'm going to be teaching you about suicide prevention in adolescents grades 9 through 12. So what is suicide? Suicide is death caused by self-directed injurious behavior with the intent to die as the result of the behavior. A suicide attempt is when one tries to end their own life but does not succeed and does not die. So some initial terms to know, because we are going to be referring to adolescence. Adolescence is the period of physical and psychological development from onset of puberty to maturity. An intervention is a strategy or approach that is intended to prevent an outcome or to alter the course of an existing condition. Another important factor that we're going to be discussing are preventative factors. Preventative factors make it less likely that individuals will develop a disorder, encompass biological, psychological, or social factors. And self-harm is various methods by which individuals injure themselves. So what are some contributors to suicide? Does anyone have any ideas? Feel free to raise your hand. So Nemo raised his hand. Nemo says that he thinks something that contributes to suicide is abuse. And he's right. Abuse, illness, chronic pain, relationship problems, and financial problems are all considered contributors to suicide. So why is this important to you? And why is prevention important? Suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds. That's about your age group. The CDC states that it is the second leading cause for ages 10 to 24, which opens a whole new window of an age group. And close to 800,000 people die to suicide each year. Why does this matter to you? It is important to help adolescents understand that suicide is irreversible and is permanent consequence, and to try to prevent it from happening. Has anyone here lost a friend or family member to suicide? Good. I see that nobody's raised their hands. It's important to keep on pushing these preventative factors to prevent family members, acquaintances, friends, or anyone that you may know or know someone who knows, to prevent them from committing suicide. So, how did suicide begin? Well, the history of suicide is very complex. Suicide was considered a serious offense in almost all of Western Europe countries from the Middle Ages to at least the French Revolution. In England, one of the last European countries to decriminalize suicide, self-murder, it was a crime up until 1961. I don't know about you, but my grandparents were around in that time. That wasn't that long ago. In many countries, such as Singapore, it is still considered a crime today. Because of this, historical data is not easily available, and the stigma surrounding suicide makes measurement even more difficult to measure. So what are some suicide myths? What do you think are some things that you've heard about suicide that you think might not be true? So Beluga the whale here says he thinks that he saw a myth that only white males die by suicide. And that is correct. That is a myth. Another myth is that suicidal teens overreact to life events. The way that someone reacts to something, it's a subjective measure. You know, maybe Beluga will take something differently than Nemo would take it. So it's important to recognize that all people handle things differently. Another myth is suicide happens without warning. That is not true. There are warning signs leading up to suicide. People just might not see it. And also another myth is talking to teens about suicide makes it likely for them to kill themselves. That's not the case. It's important to discuss this with teenagers and adolescents in order to prevent them from committing suicide by helping them realize that it is a permanent consequence. So some more facts. All individuals of all genders, races, and ethnicities, and of all upbringings and socioeconomic status are all affected by suicide. Problems may not seem like a big deal to one person, particularly adults. I'm sure everybody here has reacted to something that their parents tell them to get over it because they're overreacting, but it may be causing a great deal of distress for the teen. Most teens who attempt to die by suicide have communicated their distress or plans to at least one person. Communications aren't always direct, and talking to teens about suicide gives them the opportunity to express their thoughts. Some statistics, and I want you to be able to remember some of these statistics. So if anybody has any questions or needs more time writing things down, just hold up your hand and I'll give you more time. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. This may be on a quiz later. Suicide is the second cause of death for ages 10 to 25. Nemo needs more time. We'll give him 1 second. I'll repeat that. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 25. Perfect. Each year, 44,965 Americans die by suicide. 44,965. For every one suicide, 25 people attempt. Just think about that. One suicide, 25 people attempt. How many people are in your class today? 25? So is it likely that one person is likely to commit suicide? Let's try to prevent that. On average, there are 123 suicides per day. White males are accounted for 7 out of 10 of suicides in 2016. Let's go over some epidemiology. Adolescent suicide rates declined somewhat in the 80s till about 2003, but increased again between 2003 and 2004, and even again in 2008 and 2009. What are we doing wrong? What do we need to do to make our prevention factors more likely to prevent suicide? Suicide accounted for 14% of deaths in adolescents ages 15 to 19 years old, and 8% of deaths in children ages 10 to 4. So what are some consequences of suicide attempt? Some consequences, are just think about your family members. What are they going to feel? How are they going to feel? How are they going to react? What is suicide going to solve? I want you to construct a list. You're going to take a piece of paper and fold it into thirds. You're going to write K on the top of one section, W on the top of the other, and L on the third. I want you to list everything you know about suicide, everything you want to know, and everything you have learned so far. I'll give you about a minute to construct this. Okay. So you guys have about 30 seconds left to create your KWL chart. Okay. Good job. Does anyone have any questions so far? Good job, Nemo. Alrighty. Perfect. So let's take some time to go over what you guys have learned so far. So what have you learned? Good job. So Beluga states, if you didn't hear him, that he's learned what the definition of suicide is and how it affects everybody, not just certain people. What about Nemo? Good. Nemo discussed that he learned some contributors to suicide. How about you, Graduation Puppy? What do you want to learn from this presentation? Okay, so Graduation Puppy wants to learn some gatekeeper programs. Well, that's great because I do have some gatekeeper programs. So, some gatekeeper programs teaches students to initiate conversations after recognizing suicidal behaviors in a student and learn to refer a student effectively and correctly if deemed necessary. So this is important because that gatekeeper programs can help keep people kind of in check, you know, give someone to talk to and allow them to discuss their feelings openly, so in order to prevent suicide. Who has thought about what suicide costs the US per year? Does anyone have an idea? Let's see. Graduation Puppy, what's your number? So Graduation Puppy says it costs maybe about $500,000 a year. That's not too far. Actually, suicide costs $1,329,550,000 a year. 97% of this cost was due to lost productivity. And the total cost for suicide and suicide attempts was $93.5 billion. That's crazy. $1 spent on psychotherapeutic interventions strengthened linkages among different care providers and saved $250 in the cost of suicides. So just another reason to, you know, offer an extended hand to those who you feel may be struggling. Alrighty, so let's take a time out. Are you surprised by these numbers? Raise your hand if you're surprised and didn't expect these high numbers. Quite a few of you. I myself was surprised as well, but this is just another reason why suicide prevention is so important. Alrighty, so what's a caregiver? Does anyone have an idea of what a caregiver is? Beluga? Good job, Beluga. So Beluga says that a caregiver is a person who helps with prevention, interventions, and postvention. And you're absolutely correct. Good job. I'll give you a sticker. Good. What is a crisis situation? A crisis is described as a condition where a person, usually coping methods, aren't getting it done anymore. So it's important to really focus on these preventative factors in order to ensure that people are getting the right help and intervention that they need. Okay. So, like I said before, intervention is helping someone who is currently in a suicide crisis, really overall kind of being there for someone and posing and finding a solution to what's going on. Good. So let's take a little break. I want you guys to add some more to your Learn section of your KWL chart and maybe compose some new questions. I'll give you about 1 minute to do so. Good. Alrighty, class, so it's time to come back together as a group. So I want you all to think about suicide prevention factors. I'm going to give you a little take-home quiz, and I want you to be able to fill out everything that you think would help in a suicide prevention factor based on what we've learned and discussed in this class today. Perfect. So I want to get an overall feel of how you guys felt during this class. So we're going to play a little game. I want you to hold up a 5 if you thought that this class was effective and efficient. 4 if you think that you still had some questions at the end of the suicide lesson that you'd like me to go over in our next class. 3 if you got kind of a good understanding and maybe have a couple more questions than you would have liked to. 2 if you don't feel that you learned anything, and 1 if you learned nothing. Alrighty, you got some 4s and some 5s. Alrighty, well, if you guys have any questions after class, I'll go ahead and stick around and we can answer those questions together. Thank you.